This decision has caused the left to go crazy because they don't believe in the First Amendment. They oppose your free speech rights. They believe if you're saying something that is, quote, false or something they don't like, even if it's true and it harms their agenda, you should be censored. We had some good news this week as well. We had a decision out of the United States District Court for the Western District of Louisiana. You had two states, Louisiana in Missouri and, was it Mississippi, I think, sued? It was Mississippi, sued essentially Joe Biden and the Biden administration over its mass censorship program where government agencies were coordinating with big tech to censor American citizens. And the court issued an injunction and judgment telling essentially 40 people across the Biden administration, including the Biden White House, the FBI, the Justice Department, Department of Homeland Security, and agencies in the Health and Human Services Department, that they can't talk to these big tech companies to try to censor Americans. And in the court decision, which I have here, it's 155 pages, and it's well worth reading. And I'm going to read you part of it. Highlights all the evidence that the states and their plaintiffs were able to obtain, showing the government's role in censoring you, fellow citizen, in denying you the right to information, fellow citizen, on these social media platforms. And topic after topic, you name it, the Hunter Biden laptop, COVID vaccines, COVID masks, COVID policies, election information and disputes about elections. This is a damning document that details the massive censorship of American citizens that's never really been seen before in American history in terms of the scope and sheer numbers of victims. And the injunction is really quite extraordinary. I don't know if it's going to hold up because it seems a little bit broad, but maybe not. I think a lot of it's going to hold up. The Biden administration issued an emergency appeal because they didn't want to stop censoring Americans for any reason, especially as it's getting close to an election, right? And the judge enjoined, the judge in this case is Judge Terry Doughty, D-O-U-G-H-T-Y. I think that's how his name is pronounced. That's how I would pronounce it. And he issued this on Independence Day, aptly, in defense of the First Amendment. So he enjoined the defense, as I said, all these agencies, HHS, National Institutes of Health, all these officials in the agency. I think it's like 40 officials. The Surgeon General's office, the Surgeon General, top officials in the Biden White House, from doing the following. They're enjoined and restrained from taking the following actions as to social media companies. Meeting with social media companies for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech, specifically flagging content or posts on social media platforms and or forwarding to such social media companies urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing the removal of protected free speech. Urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner social media companies to change their guidelines for removing, deleting, suppressing, or reducing content containing free speech, protected free speech. Emailing, calling, sending letters, texting, or engaging in any communication of any kind with social media companies urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner for removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. Collaborating, coordinating, partnering, switchboarding. Switchboarding is like connecting, right? Switchboard, I want to be connected to this group. Or jointly working with the Election Integrity Partnership, a government-funded entity, by the way, the Virality Project, the Stanford Internet Observatory, or any other like project or group for the purpose of encouraging, pressuring, or inducing any manner removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content posted with social media companies containing free speech. Threatening, pressuring, or coercing coercing social media companies, etc. So essentially, they have to stop communicating with social media companies direct. I could go on and on, but you get the picture. They have to stop connecting with social media companies to censor material, suggest that they censor material, suggest that they change their policies to censor material specifically. And then they have to stop using these private cutouts, which I've talked about, to try to do what they can't do directly, which is to censor Americans based on their First Amendment protected views. And the judge explains the First Amendment. And by the way, this decision has caused the left to go crazy because they don't believe in the First Amendment. They oppose your free speech rights. They believe if you're saying something that is, quote, false or something they don't like, even if it's true and it harms their agenda, you should be censored, and big tech is obligated to do so. The following quotes the judge deals. I gotta open this up. I gotta be careful here. I've got tennis elbow, so my arm is kind of screwed up, and it hurts depending on what I do. So that hurts. If I hold these documents wrong, it hurts. So I gotta be careful. I gotta hold them like this. Tennis elbow, I guess you get to a certain age, things start breaking down, right? The following quotes reveal the Founding Fathers' thoughts on freedom of speech. For if men are to be precluded from offering their sentiments on a matter which may involve the most serious and alarming consequences that can invite the consideration of mankind, reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. George Washington, March 15, 1783. Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin with subduing the free acts of speech. Benjamin Franklin, Letters of Silence Dogwood. Reason and free inquiry are the only effectual agents against error. Error, E-R-R-O-R. Thomas Jefferson. The question does not concern whether speech is conservative, moderate, liberal, progressive, or somewhere in between. What matters is that Americans, despite their views, will not be censored or suppressed by the government. Other than well-known exceptions to the Free Speech Clause, all political views and content are protected free speech. The issues presented to this court are important and deeply intertwined in the daily lives of citizens of this country. And so I encourage you to read this full decision. I will read a little bit of it to you, but you can see it's pretty comprehensive. I pulled it out by section. This is the section. This is pages 9 through, let's see, 27, detailing paragraph after paragraph of the Biden White House directly intervening to get Americans censored. It's evidence. This is the Surgeon General and HHS and NIAID. So these are another 28 through, these are another over nearly 30 pages of evidence about COVID censorship. And then you've got the FBI censoring Americans as well. Significant information there. And the judge specifically highlights how this is what the left says is that government has free speech rights to tell companies to take Americans' free speech material down. Well, that's not true. The government doesn't have free speech rights. I mean, it can communicate information, but it has to be done in a lawful way. And you can't do something, have someone else do what you can't do directly, right? Doesn't that make sense? I can't violate your civil rights, but I can tell this person to go and do it as a government official? No, that's not the way it works. And then they say, well, you know, we're just suggesting it's not coercion. Well, that's not how the evidence describes what went on. They were threatening and coercing, and both directly and indirectly. And the court goes through, for instance, what the White House was communicating to to the big tech companies in terms of pressuring them to censor. And I want to go through some of this because you're not going to hear it from the media, and you're probably not going to read it, so I'm going to read a bunch of it to you. This is what the White House defendants were doing to get you censored. And these are all quotes from emails or details about what they did. Email quote from the White House to big tech. Can't stress the degree to which this needs to be resolved immediately. Please remove this account immediately. They were telling him to remove the account of an American citizen. Accuse Facebook of, quote, causing political violence, unquote, by failing to censor false COVID-19 claims. You are hiding the ball, yelling at big tech. Internally, we have been considering our options on what to do about it, threatening big tech. I care mostly about what actions and changes you are making to ensure you're not making our country's vaccine hesitancy problem worse. More threats? This is exactly why I want to know what reduction actually looks like. If reduction means pumping our most vaccine hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it does not work, then I'm not sure what that's reduction. So big tech told them we're reducing Tucker Carlson's reach, and they said you're not doing it enough. Questioning how the Tucker Carlson video had been demoted since there were 40,000 shares. Again, big tech saying, well, we demoted Tucker Carlson, we suppressed him like you wanted us to, and the White House says it's not enough. Wanting to know why Alex Berenson, who's a former New York Times reporter who became front and center in this debate in questioning COVID received narratives, COVID narratives pushed out by the government and big media. Wanting to know why Alex had not been kicked off Twitter because Berenson was the epicenter of disinformation that radiated outside to the persuadable public. We want to make sure YouTube has a handle on vaccine hesitancy, is working towards making the problem better. Noted that vaccine hesitancy was a concern that is shared by the highest, and I mean the highest levels at the White House. So not only did they want Alex knocked out, but they highlighted how the highest levels at the White House, meaning the President of the United States, wanted this censorship to occur. There's another, let me just read a few others here. Hey folks, wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process of having it removed, period, ASAP. White House telling someone to remove a tweet on Twitter. How many times can someone show false COVID-19 claims before being removed? Again, this is the White House talking to big tech, the judge, jury, and executioner for these giant companies. I've been asking you guys pretty directly over a series of conversations the biggest issues you are seeing on your platform when it comes to vaccine hesitancy and the degree to which borderline content, as you define it, is playing a role. So basically, they're pressuring the big tech companies to take down, quote, borderline content, which is, by the way, content that is not that it should be taken down if it's, quote, false, but stuff that is not false, but they don't like because it results in the wrong narrative as the White House is as far as the White House is concerned. Seems like your dedicated vaccine hesitancy policy isn't stopping the disinfo dozen. So they were targeting 12 people who these front groups on the outside, these private groups, had targeted. And so this is the White House saying you got to target these people better. How much proof do you need that the Biden White House was involved in violating the civil rights of millions of Americans, the free speech rights? This is a civil rights issue that we all need to be talking about. And by the way, Judicial Watch was targeted here. These groups were targeting Judicial Watch. They were targeting, I mean, I'm constantly referred to as being on this list of people being putting out disinformation. Well, the White House wanted big tech to suppress those people, including me. Judicial Watch was also on these lists. The communists love creating lists of people to go after. And so Judicial Watch was on this list. I was on the list. I think I was number 4. I was disappointed I was number 4. The commies only made me number 4 on their list of people to target. I was right up there with President Trump and some other folks who were telling the truth in a way the left didn't want to hear at the time. So Judicial Watch is as much a victim as I've talked about before. We had this litigation in California where a state government, California Secretary of State, had YouTube take down a video of ours about election integrity. So you had this unholy alliance. You had the White House directly communicating with big tech. You had state and government officials directly and indirectly communicating with big tech to censor Americans. And you've got to go back to the first part of the last century where American speech was being suppressed by the Democratic President Woodrow Wilson to find anything comparable. And of course, the country's a lot smaller then. But now you have hundreds of millions of people potentially being suppressed. Not only is their material being suppressed continuously, Twitter's gotten a lot better under Elon Musk, but Facebook and YouTube they backed away from some of the censorship, but not all of it, and they're still censoring material. You put up COVID material or vaccine material, either get labels that suppress your content, or they get these left-wing fact checkers pretend what you're saying is false, and your material is essentially deleted or shut down or made impossible to view. So the censorship continues. So to the degree the government's involved, this federal court judge has bravely said no more. And frankly, there's about 40 people on this list of people who aren't allowed to talk to big tech to censor American citizens. And if I were Congress, I'd look at this list of names and say, well, who can we have fired by defunding their positions? Congress should step up and defend this censorship, defund this censorship. And the question is, will they? I hope so. But, we've been waiting forever and a day on some other things for Congress to do in terms of protecting America from this unbelievable attack on our Republican system of government, whether it be the abuses and efforts to try to jail Trump and other American citizens, the massive censorship of American citizens by the federal government, including especially the Biden administration most recently. And let's be clear, it began with the deep state under Trump in the 2020 elections, for sure, with the Hunter Biden cover-up and such, and the censorship associated with that. And so, thank God these attorney generals in the states and other private plaintiffs took action here to at least stop some of it from happening in a continued way. And the question is it going to hold up? And of course, Congress can step in and defund the censorship. And the fact that it hasn't happened is something that's terribly disappointing, outrageous. I can't say I'm surprised. But Speaker McCarthy needs to get his act together here, because the censorship is obviously violative of the First Amendment, but it's also election interference, because a lot of the censorship has to deal with debates about either the way elections are run or issues that are prominent in the election. And so we see that with the transgender extremist agenda, which the Democratic Party and Joe Biden's administration has embraced. There's all sorts of censorship related to that. Is the government behind it? Why are we funding it? And there comes a point in time where you have to recognize, dear citizen, that everything you don't like the Biden administration, in terms of what it's doing, in terms of censorship or abuse, you have to remember it's being funded by Republicans in the House. Okay? The Republican majority in the House is funding. Now, does every Republican want to fund it? No. But that's the political reality of it. And they're unwilling to shut down the government over it, to stop it. So there are ways to get it done. They just don't want to do it. And so Judicial Watch can't defund the government or these agencies or these individual employees or fire them directly. But we can expose what's going on, and that's why we have several lawsuits to uncover this, as we've talked about. And we just sued last week the HHS agency that is the center of the censorship operation, the cybersecurity, I forget what it's called, CISA. I forget what the acronym is. Why don't you all come up with a funny acronym below for it as it relates to censorship? This Department of Homeland Security has a specific agency that's been coordinating all this censorship. And we sued for more information from that agency to see what else they've been up to. So this court action is necessary. It's not sufficient because they're going to think of ways to run around it. Certainly the courts may restrict this injunction, allow a bit more censorship to take place. But secondly, Congress can shut it all down, and until that happens, then maybe we can provide more information to highlight why Congress should do it. And this is why we sue under FOIA, and in the case of California, sue directly to enforce our civil rights. So this is a big civil rights issue, the First Amendment. It's been under attack like it's never been attacked before in American history. And so a good decision. We'll link below for you to read its entirety. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.